Welcome to Motherhood and ADHD. I'm your friend, Patricia Sen. My mission is to be a lighthouse for mothers with ADHD, helping you find your path to success by learning to appreciate your ADHD as an asset. I'm seeking to change the paradigm that ADHD means your life is doomed to be a hot mess. So I'm sharing strategies and encouraging you in your pursuit of happiness to love who you are every day of your ADHD life. Hey there, Successful Mama. Today we are talking about something very scary. It is traveling on an airplane with small children. Dun, dun, dun. Now, traveling with small children is scary, it is difficult, and you have to be well prepared. But if you are well prepared, you can make the best of a lot of situations that you can't control. Because traveling with small kids means the utmost level of flexibility, which I think we're really good at as moms with ADHD, is we're up for the adventure, we're up for the spontaneity, and we can make things fly even when it sounds like a terrible idea. So how do we minimize our level of fear, the level of difficulty, in order to deal with all those things that we can't control, like mechanical failures or delayed flights because of weather? That's all through preparation. So I'm going to run through some of my trips and tips that I've just accumulated over the years of traveling with my kids. Mine are now 4 years old and 1.5. And we started traveling with both of them by the time they were 3 months. They had their first airplane flight. So it's totally doable. I'm going to start with babies, and then as I progress through the episode here, we'll talk about bigger and bigger kids. Just be aware I'm going to kind of bounce all over the place, rapid fire, here's good information. So this will be a little bit longer episode than I normally do, but I want to make sure that I give you all the help that I can before you leave. So let's jump into it. In Elijah's first year of life, he had been on more than 15 flights, which is crazy to me because I didn't fly as a kid. We were a road trip family. I didn't leave the country till I was in my 20s, but my husband and I really enjoyed travel. That's our luxury item. That's what we spend money on, is seeing the world. And we knew that when we had kids, we wanted to integrate them into our lives, not change everything we were doing in order to fit having kids. And so there is a lot of adjustment that we have done in the way that we travel because we have 2 little ones with us, but we still get it done. So it's not going to be the go backpacking trips that we did in our 20s, but we're still going to see amazing stuff. It just means that we're going to have to stop and take a nap in the afternoon. So, you make adjustments. First thing, pack as little as possible, but don't skimp on your necessities. You only need 2 or 3 teethers when they're little babies. Don't pack 47 things because it's too much to carry. You're already trying to keep track of another person. Don't take a bunch of stuff. It's just more weight that you've got to deal with. When you're on the flight, either pre-made formula that's already mixed in a liquid form or breast milk is the best on the plane. If you can get those single serve formula packets, those are great too for the trip. It's just easier than trying to measure and all when you're on a plane. And then when you get through security, either bring a bottle of water, like a water bottle to fill up, or buy a bottle of water once you're through security, just in case you need the extra liquid. Obviously, they're going to have drinks on the plane, so you can get more water. It's just if you have a kid who goes from fine to hungry in 0.5 seconds, like my oldest did, you don't want to wait for the flight attendant. I did learn a painful lesson. One time I did carry his water cup through with water, and we were in the Philadelphia airport, and they ended up calling the bomb squad because once it doesn't pass the test so many times, they have to call the bomb squad. And I was like, if y'all had just said it wasn't going, I would have just dumped the water out. The problem was I was juggling kids at the same time and didn't realize they were on version 5 of making sure this water cup wasn't a flammable explosive. Oh my goodness. It was a 30-minute detour of waiting for them to clear our water bottle. They wouldn't even let me leave. I was like, you can have the water bottle, it's fine. But once they hit that level of concern, you are then detained. So please don't make my mistake, dump out your water before you go through security. Anyway, watch for exploding liquids when you get up into the air because of the change in the cabin pressure. I cannot tell you how many times I got squirted in the face with milk. So you have to very carefully unscrew the top, let the pressure equalize, and then reattach it before you take the cap off of a bottle. Also, seal everything well, put liquids in plastic Ziplocs just for the extra backup. All right, back to packing the minimum. They probably have stores where you are going. So don't pack everything under the sun. If you really need it, you can probably buy it where you are. I always make a shopping list before I leave, and I buy all my consumables when I get there. So diapers, food, wipes. I only pack the amount of stuff I will need to get through the first 24 to 36 hours, depending on how long our flight is. So that way, if we do get delayed and we can't go to the store late that evening, I can get through the next morning, but then I'll go get what I need at the store. You can also order things from Amazon to arrive when you get there. You can order like a grocery pickup and just swing through and pick it up when you're there. If you have a relative, give them a shopping list. They can go get stuff before you arrive. There are also baby rental companies in most major cities. So if you need to rent, for example, a crib, you can usually do that. Personally, I found that it was pretty close in price, if not cheaper, for me to just Amazon things to where I was going. To give you an example, to rent a high chair for the week was like $60, but I could buy a booster that straps onto the chair for $25. That's crazy. So you can just use those things on your trip and then you can donate them when you leave. And that's cheaper than renting it. For sure, easier than packing it. If you have the option, do not check your car seat. It will get tossed around. It might damage the integrity. The same thing for like fancy strollers. No amount of fragile stickers is going to keep the baggage guys from tossing your stuff around. So just accept that fact. And if you're going to bring along a stroller, just bring one that you're not going to be sad about it getting damaged. I know that there's like, the whole insurance and like they'll reimburse you if something, you know what? I'm not going through that hassle. It's not worth it. I'm just going to bring my cheapy stroller and keep my life simple. Okay, for your car seat, get the backpack carry case if you have another adult with you, and that way you can gate check it. When we were traveling with the really little ones, we always carried our case with us. Obviously, I was much more worried about my car seat getting damaged when I had like a 6-month-old as opposed to you just don't worry as much when your kids get bigger. I don't know. I wish I had a better way to say that. But, we have checked our car seats as they've gotten older because now that we have traveling with 2 kids, carrying all the luggage and the car seats was just too much to carry. Or like if you're by yourself with the kids, that's too much for one person to carry. But if you have the option, try to keep it with you. But if you don't, just know that it's going to get tossed around. I have specific car seats that we travel with. They're very light. They're pretty cheap. So if they do get ruined somehow, I'm not going to be sad about the cheap car seat, whereas I would be upset about the fancy car seat that I have in my car every day. And I'll link to some of my favorite products that I mention on the resources section of my website if you want to go back and take a look at them. If you're carrying your infant car seat, like the carrier that you hold on your arm, don't bring your base with you. Just know that you can attach it with the seatbelt wherever you're riding, and you don't need to bring that extra weight. Just go on YouTube before you travel to make sure you know how to install your car seat with the seatbelt, and it'll make your life much easier. If you're visiting family, then have them borrow a car seat, and same for any other like equipment that you might need, like a pack and play or whatever, from some friends. So for example, like when my nieces and nephews would come visit, I would just round up a few extra car seats from neighbors so that they didn't have to carry those. Now, a lot of car rental companies will give you the option to rent a car seat. But I just want to give you like a disclaimer. They're not required to give you any sort of particular kind of car seat. It just has to be safe. And so, you can't request like, I really want to have an infant car seat. Well, they're not going to do that. Also, the one time that we did rent a car seat, it was so gross. So we had to wipe it down with like baby wipes and Clorox wipes, trying to make it just somewhat sanitary looking. I think if you're in a tough spot and you just don't have that option to lug a car seat around with you through the airport, then that's always a viable option. But just know that you might be getting a less than satisfactory option when you arrive. If you're staying in a hotel, most hotels have a pack and play or a crib that is usually free. If not, it's a small charge, like $10 to borrow it. Just make sure you call ahead and reserve it in case they have, only a limited supply. We also had a small fold up like travel bed for when babies are not able to crawl. Like it literally just looks like a fold out box covered in fabric. I would say that's good for like car trips, but I wouldn't carry that on an airplane. It wasn't so amazing that it's worth lugging on an airplane, but I think it was definitely good for car trips. The other travel gear that I did really like was our travel boppy. That's great for when your kids are like still in that blob stage because it gives your arms a break. That's one of the hard parts about traveling with really tiny babies is they can't even sit up on their own. So being able to like kind of prop them up in the travel boppy was great. And a travel boppy like zips up so you can carry it over your shoulder like a purse. Now, once your kid gets big enough that they can sit up and move around, then it just takes up too much space. So unless your kid like really loves it, then I wouldn't bother carrying that. Okay, I know that all the super car seat mamas are going to send me hate mail, but I am going to say that personally, unless your child just loves being in a car seat, I wouldn't take it on the plane. Please don't crucify me. Why do I say this? My oldest hated being in the car seat, and putting him in a car seat and listening to him yell for hours and hours is torture. And then you have this giant thing in the way, so you can't really move around the space. Like you're already super cramped. Now you're putting this giant bulky thing in with a crying child in it. It's horrible. So unless your kid will like sit in the car seat and happily play and take a nap, hey, if your kid does that, by all means, go for it. That sounds wonderful. But to me, the likelihood that we're going to crash and then also survive is just so tiny. Like, I'm not going to worry about that tiny, tiny chance. I'm going to make my life easier. Sorry, super car seat mamas. Okay, next up, feeding them on the plane. When you are taking off and landing, make sure that you feed the baby, whether it's breastfeeding or bottle, whatever, when you're ascending and descending, because that's going to help them pop their ears because they can't do that for themselves, and that will just make them more comfortable. Next tip, use a backpack as your diaper bag. I have the like 1999 Amazon Basics backpack. It's great, pretty durable. I've pretty much wiped any drool and stuff off of it, no problem. It keeps your hands free. And I like that one because it has all the different compartments. Like there's a big compartment, and in the big section, I have snacks and like anything I couldn't fit in my suitcase is in that big section. In my books, there's like a computer pouch so I can put like books or papers, like stuff like our travel documents, all keep them flat there. And then in the middle one is where I have extra diapers, the change of clothes in case of an emergency like poo explosion or like vomit fest. That's in that section with toys on top. And then the front section, I keep my changing pad, the wipes, and like one or two diapers all wrapped up in like, the ones that, are all come together and you can like have a little like wrist strap. I have that there. And then the very front is a tiny pocket with all the like spots for like pens and stuff like that. Well, that's where I keep my tissues, the wipes, like the disinfectant wipes, and a pen, chapstick, that sort of stuff. So having your arms free with a backpack just makes it so much easier to go through security, just move around in general. So much easier to have both of your hands available. The other way I keep my hands available is I travel with my kids, obviously when they're tiny, in a carrier. So I front wear them and then I got the backpack on the back. The beautiful thing about having them right there is if they're old enough to walk, well, they can't toddle off while you're trying to, put your bags back together after security, which has happened not to me, but I've watched other parents have their like little runaways taking off. But when you go through security in the US, not in other countries, in the US, you can keep the baby strapped on and then you can opt out of the spinny x-ray machine. I don't know. For some reason, that thing just kind of weirds me out. It hasn't been around long enough. I don't know what kind of rays they're sending into my brain. Call me a conspiracy theorist. I usually kind of roll my eyes at that, but for some reason, it just weirds me out. So I always skip that over and just walk through the regular metal detector. I would say 90% of the time they will still swipe your hands for explosive residue to make sure that you are not a terrorist, obviously. Oh, and then sometimes they'll do a pat down too. It just depends on who you got that day. Side note, if you are in another country, they will make you take the baby out of the carrier while you go through. The only time that you'll need to take the baby out of the carrier is for takeoff and landing, should the flight attendant make you. So again, a lot of this is a human process and it depends on who you're with, but some of them will tell you you need to take the baby out of the carrier. For me, in my head, it seems like they'd be safer if they were attached to you, but apparently it's not. So yeah. Now, in other countries, they have like this baby seatbelt attachment that goes to your seatbelt for them to wear. Now, when you have a baby on the front and you got the backpack on the back and you're pulling a suitcase, yes, you feel like a camel. But I have found that it is personally so much easier than a stroller in an airport. I'll take feeling like a camel if that means I can move faster and I can be more efficient, because in the case that like you have a delayed flight and you've got to hustle to get to your connection, trying to like weave in between people with a stroller is really hard. Like that, I feel like that's one of the ways that my attention deficit disorder comes out. Like I have no patience for traffic, whether it be walking traffic or driving traffic. Zero patience. So I want to be able to move and get where I need to be ASAP. Now, if you're a very like stroller dependent person and you love your stroller and you think it's great, I mean, go for it. But personally, I just feel like it drags me down. Plus, that's one more thing I've got to wait for at gate check, and I don't want to wait for anything else. Okay, next thing, I'm going to touch back like on security and liquids for a second. I'm going to post the link to the TSA website for whatever's current right now on the rules. And I think it's a really great idea to just have that link on your phone so that if you get someone who's like, you can't take that, you can pull the list up and say, here, this is the rules that the government said, yes, I can. But anyway, one of the things is you can take as many liquids as you want on the plane when it's for a baby. Now, caveats to that. Sometimes if it's something that's like sealed and not opened yet, for example, if you're taking like applesauce pouches, then they just see like, oh yeah, that's not been opened, and you move along. But sometimes they need to run it through this like X-ray machine that checks for bombs, like explosive liquids. And so that sometimes needs to be a clear container. So just as like a heads up, for like pre-made formula, I just peel off part of the label so that the machine can like see from one side of the bottle to the other. Because for me, the whole point of security, like my goal is just to get through there as fast as possible. The least amount of interaction I have to have, the better. So when I walk up to that belt, I take all the liquids out and put them in one separate bin. So that way they can immediately look and see, oh, this is a bin full of baby food and formula. Most likely they're going to go, yep, seen that before, let's move along. And they're not rifling through my bag trying to find that one applesauce pouch that went rogue in the bottom. It always happens if you're not ready for it. So I carry all of our snacks in like a little zipper pouch for carrying bottles. All the liquid goes in that one thing. So I just, when I open my backpack, I take that one bag out, I put it in the other bin, and I unzip it so they can see, oh, look, baby stuff. And then we move along. I already told you my disastrous story with the bomb squad on the water cup, so you know why I feel that way now. While it was funny after the fact, it was not funny at the time. Another prep thing you need to do when you get up to the X-ray belt is to take your car seat out of the car seat bag if you're gate checking that. If you try to check it, or if you go through, gate check it, you cannot put other stuff in there. I know some people are like, hey, it's so cool, I just shoved a whole bunch of diapers in my car seat bag and they didn't know the difference. Well, guess what? Sometimes they check that. And I don't know about you, but I'm really sad when they throw away 30 diapers. So they won't let you take it through if they open it up and see that you've used your free check on of a baby thing to load up a bunch of other junk. Then they're going to charge you for the bag or you have to throw it away. Either way, sad face. So just know that that's not a good idea if you can help it. The other hard part is if you are traveling in between countries. Every country has their own rules. Super irritating is when you're coming back to the US and then the foreign country is trying to interpret the US rules, but they're not actually following them. They're like making up their own version of what they think the rule is, but it's not actually. But if you want to get on the plane, you got to follow their rules. So just stay flexible and know that you'll probably have quite a few eye rolls going on. But like, I'll give you an example. One time we were in like a small regional airport in Asia and I had applesauce pouches with me. And their method of making sure that they were not explosives was that I had to open them all. And here's me, my husband, and my father-in-law all taking sips out of the applesauce pouches because they wouldn't let us through otherwise. And it's like, well, great. Now I have 4 open applesauces and they're all going to have to be eaten in the next 24 hours or they go bad. Anyway, what are you going to do? You want to get on the plane? You follow their rules. Okay, when your kid is under 2, you can get a lap child ticket. Generally speaking, those are free if you're flying domestically, and there's a small fee if you're flying internationally. Now, when I say the word small fee, that just means it is less than a regular plane ticket. We've had some that are still like $400 or $500, but the ticket to get to that place was over $1,000, so technically smaller than a full price plane ticket, but you know. Depending on the website, sometimes you can buy them right online. Sometimes you have to call customer service after you buy your ticket and then add it on. If you are going overseas, like Hawaii, Europe, whatever, see if they have the row where you can put the bassinet on the wall for your baby. That is amazing and it's a lifesaver. But there is a height and weight limit. And so at some point, they're going to be too big for that. And since every airplane is different, the bassinet row might be number 17 on this plane and number 20 on that plane. So just call and ask. Another point about seating in all planes being different. When you have a lap child, you have to be in a row that has a third oxygen mask that comes down from overhead in the case of loss of cabin pressure. And so what you'll want to do when you get to the gate is ask the gate agent if they know which one it is, but you got like a 50-50 chance they might not know. But when you get on with the flight attendant, they will know which ones they are, and make sure that you are in the right row before you like unpack everything and settle in, because it's super annoying to get all settled in and they're like, hey, there's no oxygen mask for your baby. And then you got to pack all your junk up, find someone who will switch with you and move. I mean, the flight attendant will help find you someone or force someone to switch with you, because obviously you can't fly with, not enough oxygen masks per person, but just FYI, that was annoying one time. Now, for your baby, you will need to bring either their passport or their birth certificate, depending on if you're flying, domestically or internationally. Sometimes they'll just accept a photo of it, so you can, if you're flying domestically, just take a photo of your birth certificate and keep it with you. I've hardly ever had to show that, but we usually travel United, generally speaking. With Southwest, they do require it every time, which is super annoying, because I would think there'd be somewhere in the computer system that they could make a note of this child's birth certificate and like age and all, but apparently part of their low cost is low tracking on baby information. And so give yourself plenty of time to get to the airport, because you're going to have to stand in line and show them that birth certificate, and they have to like mark it on the boarding pass before you can go through security. And it's a long line every time that we've flown Southwest. So prepare on that one. If you have time before your trip, which, I mean, in theory, you always would, apply for the TSA pre-check ahead of time online. Not only does that line of security require you to do less things because you have verified ahead of time that you are not a criminal, generally speaking, we've noticed that the like more experienced TSA folks will be in that line. And so they're just more chill. They're more knowledgeable. They know what they're doing. And so it just makes your trip through, because you're not arguing about baby liquids with some guy who's been there for like 3 months. You get the guy who's been doing this for 20 years and knows, yeah, formula, got it, let's move along. Okay, while you're in security, act like you know what you're doing. I feel it's kind of like horses, like they smell fear. And if you look confused, then they're kind of looking at you like, they don't know what they're doing. But if you just act like you know what you're doing and you just keep on trucking, I feel like that level of confidence breeds confidence in them, and it just makes your life easier. Now, with all that being said, I was a hot mess the first like 4 flights that we took with Elijah, but it was doable. We survived, and obviously we have kept doing it. I've since traveled alone with both of the kids back when probably the baby was like 6 months and my older one was 3. It was totally doable. You'll get the hang of it, I promise. If your kid is a pretty like easy sleeper, try to find a flight that's about an hour before nap time. So that gives you enough time to get off the ground and the seatbelts are off before grumpiness sets in and for nap time. You can time that sometimes. If you have a smiley baby who likes to smile at other passengers, that's great. My oldest would smile at everybody. And of course, who's going to get mad at a smiley baby? My younger one, as someone once told me, he mean mugs. And so not as helpful. And double bonus, if you get seated next to either a grandma or like a 4 or 5-year-old, they love playing with babies and are like the best baby entertainers. So hands down, that's a win. Okay, now as your kid's getting a little older and you hit like the 2-year mark, you have to buy a ticket. Bummer. Now, if your kiddo likes your car seat, like I mentioned, use it on the plane. Mine does not like the car seat. And so what we did is we used this harness. It's called the CARES harness, and I'll link to that on the website. It basically is a strap that goes on the seat and provides a 4-point harness for them to stay in their chair. Because once they hit 2, it's like they're old enough to be in their own seat, but they don't quite understand that they have to stay in their seat. And so the CARES harness keeps them a little more secure, aka constrained, and they're not wiggling out of just a lap belt. One thing that we do prepare ahead of time with them is talk about how the seatbelt light is up in the ceiling, and when the light is on, you have to wear your seatbelt. And then when the light turns off, that's when we can take our seatbelt off and wiggle around. But while that light is on, we have to follow it. And I explained that the flight attendant is going to come around and check, so there's not an option on this one. And by the time he turned 3, he was fine sitting there. So it's a short time when they really struggle with following that. Another thing we really like is our ride-on suitcase. It's from Jet Kids, and it kind of combines the functionality of your stroller and carry-on. It folds out into a bed for long trips. So if you're traveling overseas, that's really great. But they can also ride on it. It's on wheels, so they can sit on it and you can pull it with the handle, or once they get tall enough, they can sit on it and then just like push with their feet. It's super cool. I also pack them an empty cup with a lid and fill it with water once we get through security, and then I'll add juice to it when the flight attendant comes around, so it's not too crazy, but we still have a drink until they actually bring the drink cart around, because 30 minutes before the drink cart comes around is when they're in the Sahara and dying of thirst. I always pack a lunchbox with a sandwich, lots of snacks, and once you hit the age where they really play with stuff, you can entertain them for a long time. For me, the hardest part is when they're in that 1 but not yet 2 phase. Like right now, Joseph's 19 months, and we play with the cards in the pockets and the magazine, and he'll play with the cup after I drink my water. But he's not super into toys yet. I mean, he really just wants to throw everything. Everything's a ball. And so that's really the hardest time to travel with them, when they just started walking and they just want to move. That's the hardest time. Once you hit that 2 to 3 year stage and they'll play with toys, is so much easier. So my method is I budget a new distraction for every 15 to 20 minutes that we're on the plane. So this could be snacks, a book, activities, anything that will keep them entertained. Roughly, if you do 3 to 4 per hour, that will get you through. And we always start with we look through the magazine in there and just point out things that we know, oh, it's a doggy. And then we look out the window and watch them load the luggage or the other planes driving by. I really try to entertain them with all the things that are surrounding us before I pull out the stuff. Because until you've actually taken off and get up in the air, you're not really able to pull the tray table down and all that stuff. So it's just easier to entertain with the things that exist before you get to that point. Anything that's new is usually more interesting and will entertain them longer. Plus, I'll bring a few tried and true favorite things. But usually I get things from the dollar store. Just go in and grab little plastic figurines, some small books. I love the water well, Imagine ink. If your kid's pretty good about being neat, those little tiny party favor sized Play-Dohs that are really tiny. It's hard for me. It depends on your kid, because we have the triangle shaped crayons that in theory won't roll off the table, but they're just always dropping them. And I'm I don't want to keep climbing under the seat picking up stuff. So I've scrapped those things. So if you have a quiet kid who really likes to color and will sit there calmly and make sure things don't fall on the floor, your kid better. What can they handle? But that's another idea too. What else? Stickers are really good. Just pulling them off and putting them on plain paper is great. I usually throw in a new Matchbox car. I really like also the find the item books, where it's in the picture there's 7 beach balls and they have to go through and find them all. Those are usually pretty entertaining. Okay, now when it comes to screen time, I'm usually pretty low on the spectrum of screens, but when it comes to an airplane, I totally throw that out the window. If my kid will sit there quietly watching a show and allow some peace on this airplane flight, I am all for it. So we have a $40 what do you call them, Amazon Kindle Fires, And I think I spent more on the case than the fire did, because you get them on Black Friday for super cheap. I think we got them even less than that on that day. But, it's got a good case with a stand, and he has a pair of kid headphones, and I'll link to all those on the site too. So the kid headphones are special because it doesn't allow them to turn up too loud. There's like a max out, and it's not loud at all. Like probably to you and me would be kind of irritated that it was that quiet, but it just keeps them from turning it on volume 100 and blowing out their eardrums. So ahead of time, we download stuff from like Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever, and we let him watch to his heart's content, because it is all about sanity and survival when you're on the plane. And then my emergency item, if the world is just melting down, I got this from another mom who has 4 kids, and her secret was a lollipop. A lollipop solves a lot of problems. Again, I am not a big like sugar person, but the lollipop is a great backup plan. Now, I still carry my backpack carry-on / diaper bag, even when here we are, we're at, a year and a half and 4, because one time I carried an over-the-shoulder bag thinking I would be cute, and I was very regretful that I didn't just stick with the backpack. One other random thing is that airplanes do have changing tables in their bathrooms. Obviously, they are super tiny, but they are present. And then I went back and ran through all this with my husband and said, hey, babe, what am I forgetting? And his thing, which I'm glad he pointed out, was communication. Communication. We talk ahead of time of our plan of how we're going to attack things, because it's so crazy in the moment that you have to know who's in charge of what. So, for example, he is in charge of the plane tickets. He usually carries the majority of the luggage, and then I carry and keep track of the kids, and then my carry-on bag, and usually I'll have like one suitcase. So he'll have the rest of the stuff. We talk about who's going to sit where, who's in charge of what, just because it can be really chaotic when you're trying to get like everything unloaded and through security, all that stuff. It's stressful. And so if you know ahead of time who's going to be doing what, it really does make a big difference. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about traveling internationally. We have done both Eastern Europe, and we've been to Asia several times. They are such long flights, girl, but it is worth it. When it's that long of a trip, I don't take my car seat on the plane for sure. It's just too much space when you don't have that much space to begin with for a long flight. One of the things that helped me the most was having a plan on how to deal with jet lag. Obviously, when you're traveling to another country, there's a lot of things that are going to be different and that you have to deal with, but being tired and grumpy is going to make all of those things worse. So my goal is to minimize the amount of change in their schedule. So like really quick, like math wise, if you look at Europe and Africa, generally speaking, the time difference is about 6 or 7 hours. So for example, the 7 p.m. bedtime, if they normally go to bed at 7, and let's, for simplicity's sake, say you have an angel child that sleeps till 7 a.m., if you put them to bed at midnight, then you're just going to sleep in, well, you probably won't, but your baby will, till noon. And that's totally okay, because like in Europe, nobody's getting up at 8 a.m. to do anything. Let's be honest here. Things aren't really getting going until like 10 a.m. So if you just let them sleep as long as they can, then that'll make it easier. So when we were in Eastern Europe, we would just let Elijah, who was probably about 7 months at the time, so he was on like somewhat of a schedule, but nothing set in stone quite yet. He would stay up until like midnight or 1, which was, we were there for a wedding. And so it was fine. He was up partying with us until, midnight, 1 o'clock. And then we would just put him to bed then. And he was just sleeping, unfortunately, I didn't get an angel baby. He only slept about 10 hours. So like if he went to bed at midnight, that means he was still getting up at 10. And then we would just start our day then, and then just shift everything back. So for example, if their first nap is 3 hours after they normally wake up, then if we were getting up at 10, his first nap would be at 1 p.m. That made it a lot easier. Now, if you're going to the other side of the world, like Asia, you're not so lucky. Like that was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to endure, was that sleep change, because you had finally gotten to the point where you're like, I'm not on a newborn schedule anymore. And all of a sudden you were on a newborn schedule again. So when we were in Beijing, that's like a 13 or 14 hour time difference depending on daylight savings. And that means that when they're getting up at 8 a.m., that's actually 8 p.m. back at home. It was doable on like that first week that we got there. I would get up with him in the wee hours of the morning, and I would try to get him to go back to sleep. And then I would be up with him like till about 5 or 6. And then my husband would get up at 6 a.m. Okay, now we're getting up and we're, eating breakfast and like pretending like we're on this new schedule, and his mother would be up, and the two of them could kind of get them going while I would then go back to sleep and take a nap. So it was functionable on that end of things because I had extra help. The hard part was when we came back, my husband went back to work, and now I'm the one doing all of the crazy shift hours. And so when we'd put him down, like say at 8 o'clock p.m., he would wake up by like midnight or 1 o'clock thinking like, oh, nap time's over. It's party time. It's daytime. And so I'd have to be like, no, it's really the middle of the night. Try to get him back to sleep, which would be several hours, get him tired enough to go back to sleep. And then the problem was I was working part-time then, so I didn't get to take a nap during the day. When he was napping, I was trying to get work done. And so I would just be prepared and know that week coming back is torture. And so, just know it's going to be rough. And if there's any way that you can minimize your work schedule or plan for naps or whatever, just know that's going to be a rough week. All right. Well, this was definitely my longest episode so far, but I had so much good stuff to share with you because I really want you to enjoy these beautiful memories that you have with your family. I want you to have those photos to look back on and be like, wasn't that amazing when we went tobogganing down the mountain in Mongolia? Like, that's what I want for you. Because when our kids look back on their childhood, they might remember like 1 or 2 super cool presents that you got them, but they're definitely going to remember the awesome family vacation memories that you had, whether you're taking a road trip down the street to a couple towns over, or you're on the other side of the world. Those family bonding times are what your kids remember when they're grown-ups and the stories that they're going to tell to their kids. And I want you to have that beauty for your family too. So let's do scary things together. Let's be willing to take our kids on airplanes, and just know that chances are you're never going to see anyone else on that airplane again. So if it totally goes horribly wrong, you're never going to see them again. It's fine. All right, successful mama. I want to see and hear all about your awesome next trip that you have planned. So hit me up on Facebook or Instagram and let me know what you're doing and what scary thing you did today. All right. Love you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Motherhood in ADHD. For more resources, head over to our website, www.motherhoodinadhd.com.